BBC Radio London.
It's time to turn our attention to our well-being, and my next guest is going to help me do that. Now, naturally, our health, both physically and mentally, has been hugely affected during the pandemic. And latest research shows that 65% of adults living in the UK feel more stressed than usual because of coronavirus. Now, that's normally the time when experts tell us to get off our phones, to de-stress, do some yoga, do some mindfulness, go for a walk. However, the latest report shows that 78% of Brits have used technology to de-stress or motivate themselves during the pandemic, with 94% of those saying that tech has actually boosted their well-being, which is strange because I didn't think that would happen. Joining me now is Chief De-Stressing Officer. What a title. I need a Chief De-Stressing Officer in my life. At the Stress Management Society, Shah. Neil, welcome to the BBC.
Good evening, Salma. How are you?
I'm very well. I'm very impressed by your title of Chief De-Stressing Officer.
Yes, I'm not just of the Stress Management Society. I've appointed myself the Chief De-Stressing Officer of Great Britain.
I think that's fair. I'm about to appoint you Chief De-Stressing Officer of my life, if I'm perfectly honest. I just saw that and I thought, I could really use one of those. How are you, Neil, and how have you been surviving through the pandemic?
Well, it's obviously been tough, and it doesn't matter who you are and what you do and what kind of a lifestyle you live. Every single one of us has been impacted by this. And I think this is what this study with Huawei AppGallery has shown us, is that and that's 65% of people feel more stressed than ever before. So it's not like we started from a good place. Stress was already a problem in society. Stress leading to poor mental health, which in turn led to mental illness. We had a problem with this long before coronavirus hit. This has only made things worse. And what's happened, it's been a bit of a double whammy, because obviously all the everything that's going on has led to feelings of disconnection, uncertainty, loss of control, people feeling powerless because they can't do anything to change their circumstance. But the double whammy is the things that we would normally do to make ourselves feel better or to give us a lift or a boost or a buzz when we're down, like go and see your friends, like go to the gym, go to the cinema, go to the theatre, out for a meal, go to a bar or whatever. We can't do any of those things. We can't go off on holiday to escape. So it's kind of like we have more pressure and more demands and more uncertainty than ever before. And we have less available to us to be able to make us feel better. So the only thing people can do is turn to their technology. Now, I'll be honest with you, Sam, like you, before we did this research, I was very concerned that there's been a significant increase in people using their technology and turn to their technology. And obviously that potentially for me could have led to some detrimental outcomes because people are constantly looking at a screen. But here's the thing, when you're feeling completely disconnected, isolated, lost control, your technology, basic for a lot of people, is the outlet to connect. Now, I guess the belief that I'd formed is technology is the root of all evil, which is kind of like saying money's the root of all evil.
We know it is, but we still need it.
No, well, it's actually, I think the hard reality that I've had to face, it's not. It's just a piece of paper or a digit in a spreadsheet. It's what you do with it will determine whether it has a positive or negative outcome. Because you could use money to buy guns, drugs, and bombs, or you could use it to feed homeless people or help your community or whatever. And it's the same with technology. If you're endlessly scrolling through social media or constantly checking the news feed to see how many more people have died or what else the news is going to tell you that's going to put you into a state of fear, stress and anxiety, that's not necessarily going to be good for you. But if you're using it to escape, to connect by being able to communicate and connect with your friends and family, video calls, Skype quizzes, and all these kind of things that never existed before this all came about, or learn new skills, because people are using this to learn languages or get banana bread recipes or access apps like Headspace where you can learn mindfulness. And I think this is where we can, if you are in control, if you are master of your technology, it can actually be really beneficial. The challenge is there's a button on the side of it, an off switch, which nobody ever uses, brand new, never been touched. And until we take control, it's controlling you. That's the challenge.
Well, Neil, I think you make an interesting point in that, yes, technology is something that we've all stayed connected via because grandparents have been able to FaceTime grandkids or see their grandkids for the first time after they're born or whatever it is. So that has made us feel better. But interestingly, I wonder if we were having this conversation pre-pandemic, if the statistics would be the same, or if it would be what you and I first assumed, to say that tech is actually having detrimental effects on their well-being and their mental health.
Yeah, now I agree with exactly the point you're making, that pre-pandemic, when we had a freedom of movement and we could go and see our friends and family and connect and socialize, a phone wouldn't have been my preferred or suggested option for people to experience social connection. But then we don't have a choice, because we have such restrictions on our freedoms. It's better that than nothing at all, particularly if you're feeling lonely and isolated, as many people are. I've faced that. At the moment I'm living by myself. I came out of a relationship during the first lockdown, which was really tough. And if it wasn't for my ability to be able to connect with my friends remotely, I would have really struggled, because it's just me and my dog in the house by myself. And sometimes it feels like the walls are closing in on you a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Neil, you made an interesting point about that off button on these devices that no one ever uses. And I wanted to ask you a question, because I think in younger generations, or generations who have grown up with tech and are quite tech savvy, we are having conversations about digital health and the importance of downtime, or the importance of what our screen time is. And if our screen time is getting too high, we'll look at that and we assess that data, and we will put in measures on our phones to say that our apps switch off, or our internet switches off at a certain time, or our blue light comes down, or whatever. We have all of these things and we're quite savvy at them. But my question is, the older generation aren't, and the older generation are not necessarily having those conversations, but they're quite glued to their phones. My friend and I were having this conversation just last week about her mum constantly scrolling through and just constantly being worried by the news and not being able to put it down or have the same digital well-being methods that we do as people who've grown up with it.
Well, I'm not sure it's just limited to a demographic grouping. By the very nature and design of a lot of these apps and these technologies, they're designed to be addictive. You only need to watch Social Dilemma on Netflix to know that actually they employ behavioral psychologists to really encourage people to become addicted to their technology, because as long as you keep consuming their products, that they keep growing in value. Now, ultimately, if you have the strength of character to have rules around how you use your technology, and you are the master, you are not the slave to it. So a lot of us are slaves to our technology. The moment it bleeps, pings, buzzes, or vibrates, we're like, yes, sir, I will answer, I will respond immediately, because you've been trained that way. Now, here's the thing. You dip in when you want to, and then the rest of the time you kind of leave it on the sideboard. That's hard, because, as I said, we are so addicted and so entrenched into our digital lives. Simple rules like the first hour of your day, starting the day without turning your phone on, and do something like go for a walk with a dog, or do some yoga, or read a book, like paper book. The last 2 hours of your day, spend some time, have a meal with your family, have a chat, kind of, meditate, have a bath, but have at least 2 or 3 of your waking hours that are unplugged, away from your technology. And that's going to teach you to be able to live your life without reaching for your phone to Google every thought that comes into your mind, or to post everything that you've done or experienced or eaten or seen onto your social media channels. And I think this is where we can start to understand it's there as a tool, it's a resource, but ultimately you have to take back control of your life, because otherwise you are literally enslaved by your technology.
That's a really good point. But no one, no one's not the right word, but not a lot of people actively do that. And the pressures of the day are so great, and we're always worrying about what call we need to be on, or where we need to log on. Or I know for me, the app that I look at the most, that I genuinely spend the most amount of time in, it's the last app I look at before I go to bed, and it's the first app I open in the morning, is my calendar, to see what my schedule is and what's happening, what's in the day. And I just spend.
Summer, let me make an observation. Do you remember the movie The Matrix? I'm assuming you've seen it.
Yes. I'm not a fan, by the way, but yes.
Yeah, I don't blame you for not being a fan. I'm actually starting a campaign to get it reclassified as non-fiction, because that's actually the world we live in today. If you kind of, imagine the Nebuchadnezzar is the real world, and the Matrix is your digital world through your devices, right?
Yeah.
Like, you take the red pill and realize that actually everything that you're experiencing through your apps and your devices is not the real world. There is a beautiful real world out there for us to enjoy if we can kind of unplug from our devices long enough to appreciate it's still there. So here's the thing: you go into the matrix to do what you need to do, but you retreat back to reality, which in the movie was the Nebuchadnezzar. For us, it's planet Earth, which is such a beautiful place. And I think we are slowly becoming so disconnected. And what's happened over the last 12 months has thrown us more into kind of our digital lives and taken us more away from reality, because we're not able to experience it in the same way. So we're trying to escape to this kind of this matrix illusion of reality. Now, I think this is where some people have had the opportunity to be able to spend it with their friends and with their families, should I say, walking and being in their homes, which is great. But I said a lot of people, particularly people that are older or isolated, or don't have people that live with them, or people are alone, have actually descended more into kind of digital consumption, because that's the only way to feel connected to something beyond their four walls.
Absolutely. And it's been a lifeline for so many people, and that
Of
can't be
course.
underestimated. But Neil, my question here is, I'm looking at this stats. There's 94% of people saying that tech has boosted their well-being. We have a roadmap. We are looking towards June the 21st. We're all working towards that date. The vaccinations are going up. Life is going to come back. It's going to return. What do you think that means for our relationship with tech? And will tech still be the thing that is boosting our well-being when we can live life in real world again?
Sam, I'm going to say something that's probably not going to go down very well. It's not going to be a particularly popular thing. The chances of us going back to how life was pre-COVID are slim to none. And let me explain what I mean.
Say more, Neil. Don't just leave me on that.
Yeah, and the reason I say that is when if somebody has a trauma at some point in their life, particularly earlier in their life, it tends to template their behavior from that point onwards. If you have a bad relationship, and let's say you were with someone that cheated on you, the next time you go into a relationship, there's going to be a fear, and that will dictate your decisions and the way you show up. For the last year, we've been in a state of fear and anxiety. We've been told that don't hug granny, don't do this, don't do that, because there's fears and there's dangers. The younger you are, the bigger percentage of your life that this past year has been. If you're 11 or 12, you might not remember what your life was like before this. Even if you're 30 or 40, it's still a good chunk of your life. Now, what's going to happen is fears and sort of behaviors will have been templated, which can take a while. With therapy, it could take a while to undo. With no therapy, that a lot of these behaviors will still continue.
Right.
Because even if tomorrow Boris was to say that, let's open up society, everyone to go back to normal, that ain't going to happen, because people are in captivity, suffer from what's known as Stockholm syndrome. When they're released, because it's like the fear of going back.
Yeah.
And people that have been in prison for a long time, and essentially what's happened is not too dissimilar to us collectively being put in prison for the last year. So it's going to take a while, and there will be some hangovers, but also there have been people that have, particularly companies, that have looked at, well, maybe this is a good opportunity to shift things permanently. Home working, I think, is here to stay. Even companies that wouldn't entertain home working. So there are people that you would rely on going to work for the demarcation between work and home, to have those social connection, to to have kind of a somewhat of a structure and routine. There are companies that are talking about either downsizing or doing away with the physical workplace. This is a real, actual thing.
Yeah.
So what's going to happen is, even if there is no more COVID to worry about, what's happened over the last 12 months has caused a change in the trajectory of our society. As we become more reliant on technology, there'll be a lot of people think, well, that meeting I'd go to, or that catch up I'd have with my friends, or I've got a friend that's single at the moment, is dating, and they would often go to speed dating. What he said to me the other day, oh, you can kind of do it in the comfort of your own home. Why would I bother traveling an hour into London and doing this? I could just do it from home. So it's just like things that didn't exist before are here. And I think a lot of these things will end up being here to stay. So that's my concern. We are social creatures, but we're looking at, for ease and convenience, to gain back a little bit of time, we are doing away with some of the things that we don't I don't think we fully understand the true benefit of actually meeting up with friends as opposed to doing it virtually. Actually having a meeting with someone and having that time at the beginning of the meeting where you might just talk about what's going on with your kids or how's your football team doing. You don't do that
Mm.
on a Zoom call. You kind of get straight to it. You're only dressed from the waist up because you've just literally rolled out of bed and thrown a shirt on and you're still in your underpants. Do you know what I mean? You would get dressed, you would travel to a particular destination.
Yeah, you can't go to work just in tracksuit bottoms and then a blazer on top, which is exactly what I do every single day when I'm on a Zoom call. Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and I think there is an element of truth there with work and meetings. I think we're not going to have to drag everyone into a meeting room in the same way because we can all do it over Zoom. However, I don't know, maybe I'm being naive, maybe I'm being hopeful. I don't know, Neil, but I feel like there's going to just be this boom and that people who have missed and craved holding on to one another are going to relive the beauty or re-find the joy in face-to-face contact and being with one another. And we're going to be all crazily socializing for quite some months, that the second roaring 20s is coming.
I genuinely hope so. Or deeply from the bottom of my heart, that's the case. And I hope that the fear that has been templated over the last 12 months is quickly forgotten. I can only cite experiments that have taken place, particularly there was a KGB experiment in Russia. I think it was during the 80s, where they did a program of controlled fear. So they basically put people into a state of fear by giving them these stories. And then when they then started sharing the truth after 6 months of templating fear, that was 6 months of templating fear through adverts on the television, not too dissimilar to kind of what we experienced. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just kind of observing what's happened. So when they then changed the narrative, people wouldn't believe it because they were so templated by the fear. Now, my concern is that because we have had such shocking images and we've been told stay at home, don't go out, etc., are people going to forget that and drop it immediately the moment they're told that things are okay? Or is there going to be a hangover for that? And I can only go on historical precedents and the things that I've read that have happened in other countries where that fear has lasted long beyond when the message was being disseminated around that fear. So that's my concern. And ultimately, this is where we as a society need to support each other. And actually, we've been through a culture change program, an enforced culture change program nationally or internationally. What we need to do is to ensure that we're supporting each other to transition back to whatever. I hate the term new normal because it's more, it's new abnormal, I think is more correct because there's nothing normal about what's going on. But this is where we need to support each other and we need to basically start to look at how do we support each other to be able to find our way forward and move beyond this fear. Because the irony is when you are stressed and when you're in a state of fear and anxiety, your immune system is suppressed. You're more susceptible to illness and nobody talks about that.
Yeah, of course.
We all know that when you're stressed, you're more likely to catch a cold or flu. But yet we're collectively so stressed and in the middle of a pandemic, that's probably the worst thing we could do. In fact, boosting your immune system is going to do far more for you. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't wear a mask or sanitize. Those things are important. But your immune system is your first line of defense. I don't hear people talking about that. I don't hear people saying, make sure you get good night's sleep, make sure you exercise, make sure you eat well, make sure you manage your stress. Because these are the most important things that we can do to boost our immune system. And I think this is where we can now start looking at summer's coming, spring is dawning. We've got a roadmap out of this. Let's make sure this is the last one, because actually this is where we have had an opportunity to reflect on the parts of our society that don't work, particularly the vulnerable members of our society that have really been failed during this experience. And how do we come out of this better than we came into this? I know that there's those cheesy build back better, which I hate those kind of cliched sort of phrases, but I genuinely hope that what we find ourselves moving towards is better than where we came from, because what we were doing wasn't sustainable. We lived in a highly consumerist world where it was all about what you have and what you can buy and a quick fix of like, I got my delivery through the door, I get 5 minutes of dopamine here, or I've had my likes on Instagram or Facebook, I feel good for 5 seconds and then it dissipates and I need to consume again, or I need more likes to feel that way. We need to kind of drop this sense of addiction we have to the lifestyles we've created, and to be able to find kind of that peace and the sustainable approach with regards to all aspects of life, whether that be the environment or consumption or how we look after each other, where the actual true value of the human experience isn't what you own, it's what you experience.
Yeah, absolutely. But the flip side of this, Neil, is I'm sure you've had this experience of trying to explain to either your parents or your grandparents how a piece of technology works. And now they're all on it and they're all they're all very tech savvy now. Is the kind of the silver lining of all of this and of a pandemic and being locked down, although I say silver lining and I'm being very generous with that term, but
Yeah.
has this been good for older generations to get them onto tech or to force them onto tech when they were perhaps reluctant previously?
It's a double-edged sword. Now, as I said, I guess the realization I've had is technology is neither good nor bad. It's the use and the applications and what it can do for you. I know for a fact that my mum would rather be out socializing with her friends and doing all her kind of community activities. She found Candy Crush. I don't even. I've never played Candy Crush in my life.
Neither have
It's
I.
dangerous. She racked up a bill on it. It's like having a
No.
teenager, and it was just like I was like, "Mum, what are you doing?" Because again, it's kind of like the irony is, working with an older person with technology is kind of like dealing with a young child or a teenager with technology. Don't really know what they're doing, and they can end up screwing things up.
I want to know how much the bill was.
I spoke to the company, and it was a lot more than it was, but they were very kind, and they reduced it to a couple £100.
Wow, that was the reduction. Wow, that must have been a hefty bill.
I had to blag it honestly, but the point is, it's just like she didn't know, and it's just like she's gone and she's got no idea. She found Facebook a couple of years ago, and she's been completely all over that, and it's kind of embarrassing when your mum's like commenting and posting on all of your posts on Facebook. I got to the point of like, can I block her? Is that all right? Like, I'm blocking your mum. But it was just like, it was really embarrassing things as well. Like, particularly on work-related posts where I'm speaking at an international conference in like Dubai, and she's like, I am so proud of you. And I'm like, oh, Mum, don't do that. Like, seriously.
Everyone can see.
But no, it's cute. And I think with anything, it's ensuring that we're able to support and educate, whether that's a child or older person. When you're having a new experience, it's kind of like you're finding your way. And my experience has been working in the mental health field that there are a lot of people, older people, or sick people, sadly people that are in their life. They don't want to be talking to their friends and family on Skype or Zoom. What they want to be doing is spending the time they have with the people that they love. And I think that's the biggest tragedy for me, particularly when I hear stories of people that have passed and they spent the last 6 months or a year of their life alone with the occasional Zoom or Skype call. And that's, okay, it's better than nothing, but that's not what people want. I spoke to someone recently, and they were like, I would literally trade 5 years of my life for 5 days with the people I love. And that's, when you hear stories like that, that breaks my heart.
Yeah, of course, it absolutely does. And also makes us think about the kind of world that we're building, right? And the kind of society that we're building.
Absolutely. And that's where we've got Stress Awareness Month coming up in April. That's kind of a big international campaign we run just to really get people to focus on how do we increase our resilience and improve our ability to manage stress before it gets to the point where it starts to affect our mental health. The theme this year is regaining control, connection and certainty, because these are things that we don't have. We have very little control over what happens outside of ourselves, but we have absolute control over how we choose to react and respond. We may not be able to connect in the ways we used to, but obviously we can find new ways to connect with the people we care about. And that sense of certainty, okay, we don't necessarily have absolute certainty of what's going to happen with the roadmap out, but what we can do is find that internal sense of certainty, be sure of yourself and how you're going to show up and how you're going to look after yourself. And manage everything you're experiencing during this period. So that's kind of the theme that we're running for Stress Awareness Month this year. And we've got tons of free resources we've put together to support people because it's a tough time. And as I said, we do just really need to support each other to get through this till the point where things open up again.
How do you de-stress, Neil?
Well, I'm very, very lucky. My best friend is, it kind of looks like a polar bear, but he's just a big, white, fluffy dog. And we walk 2 or 3 times a day. That's kind of our de-stress. And the one thing I've added to this is unplugged walk. So I walk without technology or headphones, and it's just it's mindfulness, right? I'm being present in the moment. So I'm feeling like today we were walking, it was pouring with rain, and I literally just allowed myself to get drenched, and just the experience of the sensations of this moment, like, literally being soaked to my skin, the wind on my face, feeling a bit uncomfortable, but being present to that. Or a couple of days ago, it was feeling the sun, the leaves rustling in the wind, but just being present. 90% of the stress we experience happens in the past or the future. We're stressing about
Right.
things that haven't happened yet
Yeah.
because we're worried about what's going to happen next week or the week after, or we're anxious or concerned about things that have already happened. Now, we can't go into the past to change things, and we haven't got a time machine to transport ourselves into the future. The gift that we have is this moment. That's why it's called the present, because it's a gift, right? Eckhart Tolle wrote the book, The Power of Now. This is where we have the power. This is where you can affect change in terms of how you feel in this moment. And that's really when we can reclaim this moment through practices like mindfulness. Now, just to be clear, a lot of people think mindfulness is meditation. Meditation is a practice. Mindfulness is a way of being. You can be mindful in anything that you do. It's kind of like me having this conversation with you.
Right.
Being mindful is I'm present and I'm focused and I'm enjoying this time with you. If I had the television on in the background, I'm tapping away on my keyboard, I'm eating some food, I'm not being present, and you all know. You know that you don't have my 100% focus of attention. Now, if you're eating your meal and you're kind of, doing other things, flicking through your phone or whatever, you're not being present to the act of eating. Spending time with your family. The amount of times I've been to restaurants and seen people sat with their families and they're all scrolling through their screens. It's like you're out, you've paid for this meal in this wonderful restaurant, and you're not even present to each other. And I think that's, again, one of the downsides of technology. Is the irony is, obviously, we work with a technology company that have just launched a mindfulness app, and it's like, it's great to have an app to teach you the skills, but true mindfulness is not listening to an app. It's kind of being present to whatever is happening, even if you feel sad or uncomfortable. Just being present to that. Oh, that's interesting. This is where I am right now. I'm just going to observe that.
Right.
Or just
Absolutely.
observing your breath. And for me, living my life as mindfully as possible is a key part of it. So whether that's walking or exercising or time with my friends, or even when I'm working or doing any kind of media activities, I ensure I'm present, because this for me is enjoyable. Whereas if I'm like thinking about 5 different things, I'm trying to multitask, I'm going to stress myself out, and then all of a sudden it's not enjoyable anymore.
I hear what you're saying. I am that person that whirls around doing 1,001 things, and I do like it. I like it a lot. But maybe I need to de-stress, so I'm not one to talk. I would definitely not take my advice.
Well, I'm going to encourage you to check out our free resources. It's at stress.org.uk/stress awareness month. We've got a really beautiful mindful colouring book. It's free of charge. You can just literally download it and print it off, and you can just get your pens and pencils and colour in. And just when you do it, don't do anything else. Just focus on colouring in there's these beautiful animals. It's one of our colleagues that designed it. It's really cool. But there's some books, there's some mindfulness videos, there's like tons of stuff, and it's all free of charge. But the best thing that we put together is our 30-day challenge. So it's a little exercise you can do every day to increase your resilience to the challenges and stress that we face in everyday life. So, Sam, I'm going to encourage you to check it out and let me know how you get on.
I absolutely will, and hopefully our listeners will as well. Neil Shah, it's been such a joy chatting to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
And I'd love to come back on Stress Awareness Month, and we can kind of talk about it whilst the month's going on. If you've got time, I'd love to have another chat.
I absolutely do. Make sure you do come back. I'll chat to you then, and hopefully I will have tried out all of your resources by then and be less stressed.
Fantastic.
All right,
Excellent.
Neil, take care of yourself.
Thanks, Sam. Such pleasure talking to you.
And
have a
to
lovely
you
evening.
too.